Nobody wants to talk about this because it's terrifying. America's national debt just crossed a threshold that historically has meant one thing: economic collapse. Rome crossed it, Spain crossed it, every empire that ignored it fell. We just crossed it last year. And right now, as you're watching this, the United States owes $36 trillion. Write that number down, 36 trillion. That's not just big, it's incomprehensible. But here's what makes it deadly. We're not just in debt, we're in a debt spiral. And if you don't know what that means, you're about to understand why economists are quietly panicking. A debt spiral works like this. You borrow money, then you borrow more money to pay the interest on the money you already borrowed. Then you borrow even more to pay the interest on that. It's a loop that feeds itself, getting bigger and faster until the whole system explodes. Rome did this. America's doing it right now. In Rome, 235 AD, the empire was still powerful, still feared, still considered invincible. But something was rotting beneath the surface. The government was spending more than it earned. Sound familiar? They had massive military costs, keeping legions stationed across 3 continents. They had enormous infrastructure projects, roads, aqueducts, coliseums. They had welfare programs, giving free grain to Roman citizens. All of this cost money they didn't have. So what did Rome do? They started debasing their currency. The denarius, Rome's silver coin, was the dollar of its time. In 235 AD, it was 95% silver. By 265 AD, just 30 years later, it was only 5% silver. The government melted down coins, mixed in cheap metals, and pretended the money was worth the same. It wasn't. Prices exploded. A pound of grain that cost half a denarius suddenly cost 50 denarii. Life savings evaporated. The middle class disappeared. But here's the part that should make your blood run cold. They didn't do this because they were stupid. They did it because they were trapped. They were in a debt spiral. They couldn't raise taxes anymore because people were already broke. They couldn't cut spending because the military would revolt and the people would riot. So they printed money. Well, they minted coins, but it's the same thing. They inflated their way out of debt, and it destroyed them. Now look at America. In the year 2000, our national debt was $5 trillion. Today, it's $36 trillion. That's a 700% increase in 25 years, but that's not even the scary part. The scary part is the interest. Last year, America paid over $1 trillion just in interest payments. Not paying down the debt, just the interest. That's more than we spend on defense, more than we spend on education, more than most countries' entire economies. To pay that interest, we have to borrow more money, which creates more interest, which means we have to borrow even more. See the loop? We're trapped in the exact same mechanism that destroyed Rome. The only difference is we can't debase physical coins anymore. We do something worse. We print digital dollars and call it quantitative easing. The Federal Reserve, America's central bank, creates money out of thin air. Not literally printing bills, though they do some of that, but mostly they just add zeros to computer screens. They use this invented money to buy government bonds, which is just a fancy way of saying they're lending the government money that doesn't exist. This increases the money supply. And when you increase the money supply without increasing the actual goods and services in the economy, you get inflation. Your dollar buys less, your savings lose value. Sound familiar? Between 2020 and 2023, the Federal Reserve created more money than existed in the entire history of America before 2000. Read that again. More money in 3 years than in 200 years. The money supply exploded. And what happened? Inflation hit levels we hadn't seen in 40 years. The price of eggs, gas, rent, everything skyrocketed. Your paycheck stayed the same, but it bought half as much. That's not bad luck. That's monetary debasement. That's Rome. After Rome started debasing their currency, something interesting happened. The wealthy got wealthier. How? Because rich people don't keep their money in currency. They keep it in assets. Land, businesses, gold. When the currency gets debased, asset prices go up. If you own a farm and the denarius loses 90% of its value, your farm is now worth 10 times more in denarii terms. The rich Romans saw this coming and protected themselves. The poor and middle class, who only had coins, got crushed. Look at America since 2020. The stock market hit record highs. Real estate prices exploded. Bitcoin went parabolic. Meanwhile, regular people struggled to afford groceries. The wealth gap expanded faster than any time in modern history. This isn't coincidence. This is what happens during monetary debasement. Assets inflate, currency deflates, and the middle class gets hollowed out. Rome's middle class disappeared between 235 and 280 AD. America's middle class has been shrinking since 2000, and it's accelerating. Now, Rome tried to fix this. Emperor Diocletian, around 301 AD, issued the edict on maximum prices. He literally made it illegal to charge more than a certain amount for goods. Price controls. If a merchant charged too much for bread, they could be executed. Did it work? Of course not. Merchants just stopped selling. Why risk your life selling bread at a loss? The goods disappeared from markets. Black markets exploded. The economy collapsed further. You can't fix a currency problem with force. You can't legislate away economic reality. America hasn't imposed price controls yet, but we're seeing the same instincts. Politicians talk about windfall profit taxes on oil companies, rent control in cities, price gouging laws. These might sound good, but history shows they make the problem worse. They treat symptoms, not causes. The cause is the debt spiral. The cause is spending more than we earn year after year, decade after decade, until the math becomes impossible. A debt spiral has a point of no return. Rome hit it around 260 AD. That's when the interest payments got so large that even debasing the currency couldn't keep up. Tax revenues fell because the economy was contracting. Spending kept rising because of wars and welfare. The gap became unbridgeable. Within 50 years, Rome split into 3 separate empires. Within 200 years, it was gone. America's crossing dangerous thresholds right now. Our debt to GDP ratio just passed 130%. That means we owe more than our entire economy produces in a year. There's a study by economists Carmen Reinhart and Kenneth Rogoff that analyzed every major economy over the past 200 years. They found that when debt to GDP crosses 90%, economic growth slows dramatically. When it crosses 120%, fiscal crises become almost inevitable. We're past both markers. We're in the danger zone, and we're accelerating. The demographic time bomb. Rome faced this too. As the empire declined, birth rates fell. Fewer young workers meant fewer taxpayers. More old people meant more welfare costs. The worker-to-dependent ratio collapsed. America's facing the exact same crisis. Baby boomers are retiring at a rate of 10,000 per day. Social Security and Medicare costs are exploding. By 2030, these programs alone will cost more than all federal tax revenue. Not some of it, all of it. That means everything else, defense, infrastructure, education, will have to be borrowed. Do you see the trap? We're not making a choice to go into debt. We're locked into systems that automatically create debt, and those systems are growing faster than the economy. This is the definition of a spiral. Rome tried to solve this with conquest. They invaded new territories to plunder their wealth. It worked for a while, but eventually they ran out of neighbors to conquer, and the military costs of defending the expanded empire exceeded the wealth they extracted. The expansion became a liability. America tried something similar after World War II. We didn't conquer, we dollarized. We convinced the world to use dollars for international trade. This created artificial demand for our currency, letting us print more without immediate inflation. It was genius. It gave us decades of living beyond our means. But that system is cracking. China, Russia, Brazil, they're creating alternative payment systems. They're trading in yuan, in rupees, in anything but dollars. As dollar demand falls, our ability to print without consequences disappears. We're moving faster than Rome. It took Rome 250 years to go from debt problems to collapse. America's national debt was $1 trillion in 1981. It's $36 trillion today. That's a 36-fold increase in 44 years. Rome debased their currency over decades. We're doing it in years. Technology has accelerated everything: communication, commerce, and collapse. The signs are everywhere if you know where to look. Regional banks failing, commercial real estate imploding, credit card debt at record highs, student loan debt crushing an entire generation, corporate debt at levels that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. And underneath it all, the government borrowing trillions every single year to keep the machine running. We're not heading toward a cliff. We're already over it. We just haven't hit the ground yet. The question isn't if this ends badly. The question is when and how bad it gets. When Rome's debt spiral reached critical mass, the collapse didn't happen overnight. It was a cascade of failures, each one making the next inevitable. First, the currency became worthless. Then trade broke down. Then regions started ignoring Rome's authority. Then the military stopped getting paid and turned on the government. Then barbarian invasions weren't repelled because there was no functioning army. Then, finally, the last emperor was deposed and nobody even bothered to name a replacement. The empire didn't fall with a bang. It whimpered into irrelevance. America's version will look different, but the structure will be the same. We're already seeing the early stages. The dollar's purchasing power has declined 96% since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. That's not conspiracy theory, that's official data. What cost $1 in 1913 costs $26 today. Your great-grandparents' savings, if they kept it in cash, would be worthless now. But the acceleration is what matters. 50% of all dollars in existence were created in the past 5 years. Half, in 5 years. Think about that. Every dollar in your bank account, your paycheck, your retirement account, it's worth half what it should be because the supply doubled. This is invisible theft. It's a hidden tax that nobody voted for, and most people don't even realize it's happening. You might be thinking, okay, but I'm not rich. I don't have much savings anyway. How does this affect me? This is exactly what Roman peasants thought before their world collapsed. Let me walk you through the chain reaction. When the dollar weakens, everything imported gets expensive. Food, electronics, clothes, medicine. 70% of what Americans consume has foreign components. As the dollar falls, your cost of living skyrockets. Your employer can't pay you more because they're dealing with the same inflation. Your real wages, what your money actually buys, decline. You get poorer without your salary changing. Then the debt spiral hits you directly. As the government borrows more, interest rates rise. Why? Because lenders demand higher returns for riskier loans, and lending to a country drowning in debt is risky. Higher interest rates mean your mortgage costs more. Your car loan costs more. Your credit cards cost more. Small businesses can't afford to borrow, so they stop expanding and start laying people off. The job market weakens. Unemployment rises. Tax revenues fall. The government has to borrow even more. See how it spirals? Rome experienced this exact sequence. By 270 AD, regions were issuing their own currencies because Roman coins were worthless. Gaul had its own emperor. Britain stopped sending taxes to Rome. The empire fragmented because the economic ties dissolved. When money fails, everything built on it fails too. The question for America is, what happens when the dollar fails? We're the world reserve currency. Our collapse doesn't just hurt us, it destabilizes the entire global economy. Countries holding dollar reserves, China has over 3 trillion of them, will see their wealth evaporate. They'll be furious. International tensions will explode. Trade wars will become real wars. This isn't fear-mongering. This is what happens when economic systems collapse. The Great Depression led directly to World War II. Weimar Germany's hyperinflation created the conditions for the Nazi rise. Economic collapse and social chaos are inseparable. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a warning. The wealthy Romans who survived did 3 things. First, they converted currency into hard assets: land, precious metals, anything with intrinsic value. Second, they diversified their holdings across regions. If Rome fell, they had assets in Gaul or Egypt. Third, they developed skills and relationships that had value beyond money. A skilled craftsman or a well-connected merchant could survive currency collapse. Their value wasn't tied to coins. Apply this to today. If you're holding all your wealth in dollars, in a savings account earning 1% interest while inflation runs 7%, you're losing 6% of your purchasing power every year. That's not saving. That's slow-motion poverty. The wealthy know this. They're buying real estate, stocks, commodities, cryptocurrency, anything that's not pure currency. They're protecting themselves from the debasement you're experiencing. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice, but I am a student of history, and history is screaming at us right now. Diversification isn't just smart, it's survival. Don't keep all your eggs in a basket that's actively being devalued by policy. Understand that the system is designed to benefit asset owners at the expense of wage earners. The game is rigged, but you can still learn the rules and play accordingly. Skills become currency when money fails. During Rome's collapse, people with practical abilities, farmers, blacksmiths, builders, maintained their quality of life. People who only knew how to manage money or push paper suffered catastrophically. Their expertise became worthless overnight. In America, we've built an economy where millions of jobs are essentially administrative, managing the complexity of the system itself. When that system fails, those jobs disappear. But people who can build things, fix things, grow things, heal things, their value endures. This isn't about becoming a doomsday prepper living in a bunker. This is about understanding that economic transformations destroy some forms of value while preserving others. If all your human capital is tied to a specific economic system, you're vulnerable. If your skills and knowledge are broadly applicable, you're resilient. Rome's collapse was devastating for senators and tax collectors, but farmers kept farming and bakers kept baking. Can America avoid Rome's fate? Technically, yes. We'd need to do something Rome couldn't, make painful choices before we're forced to. Cut spending dramatically, raise taxes substantially, accept a major recession to reset the system. But here's the problem. Democracies don't make painful choices voluntarily. Politicians who promise austerity lose elections. The public votes for more benefits, lower taxes, and refuses to accept trade-offs. This isn't a criticism, it's human nature. Rome became an empire partly because the republic collapsed under similar pressures. Everyone wanted benefits. Nobody wanted to pay for them. And eventually, the system that couldn't say no to itself destroyed itself. America's facing the same democratic trap. We have presidential candidates promising more spending, more tax cuts, more benefits, zero mention of the debt. Why? Because telling the truth is political suicide. Imagine a candidate saying, we need to cut Social Security, raise the retirement age, increase taxes, and accept a severe recession to fix our debt problem. They'd poll at 2%. So instead, everyone promises easy solutions that don't exist, and the debt grows, and the spiral accelerates. There's a concept in economics called the fiscal dominance regime. It's when debt gets so large that all policy decisions revolve around servicing it. You can't cut spending without defaulting. You can't raise rates without making interest payments explode. You can't stop printing money without crashing the economy. You're trapped, and every option is bad. Rome entered this regime around 250 AD. Many economists believe America entered it around 2020. If they're right, we're no longer preventing collapse. We're just choosing how it happens. The optimists say technology will save us. Economic growth will outpace the debt. Innovation will create prosperity that makes the numbers manageable. Maybe. Rome had technological advantages too. Concrete, aqueducts, military engineering. That wouldn't be matched for 1,000 years. It didn't save them because technology can't fix math. If you spend more than you earn, and you borrow to cover the gap, and the gap keeps growing, technology just means you collapse with better tools. The pessimists say collapse is inevitable and imminent. The dollar will hyperinflate, society will fragment, we'll see civil unrest and potentially civil war. Maybe. But Rome took centuries to fully collapse. Complex systems are resilient until they're not. They can absorb incredible stress, adapting and surviving in diminished forms. America might not collapse, it might just decline. We might become a less powerful, less prosperous, less unified version of ourselves, slowly enough that each generation accepts the new normal. Personally, I think we're somewhere in between. We're not going to wake up tomorrow in Mad Max. But we're also not going to technology our way out of mathematics. What's more likely is a long, grinding decline punctuated by crises. A bank failure here, a currency crisis there, each one eroding confidence and wealth. The rich will protect themselves. The connected will find opportunities. The vast middle will get squeezed, slowly realizing that the American dream their parents knew isn't available anymore. This is already happening. Millennials are the first generation in American history expected to be poorer than their parents. Gen Z is facing even worse prospects. Home ownership is becoming unattainable. Retirement is a fantasy. Debt, student loans, medical bills, credit cards, is the defining feature of young American life. This isn't failure of character. This is what happens when you're born into the downslope of an empire's debt spiral. But here's what gives me hope, and why I made this video. Awareness changes outcomes. Rome fell partly because most Romans didn't understand what was happening. They couldn't see the systemic forces destroying their world. They blamed barbarians, blamed Christians, blamed corrupt emperors, and all of those were factors. But they were symptoms, not causes. The cause was the debt spiral, and almost nobody understood it. You're different. You're watching this video, which means you're someone who seeks to understand systems, not just react to headlines. That gives you an enormous advantage. When you understand the game, you can make better moves. When you see the spiral, you can position yourself accordingly. You can't stop the macro forces, but you can control your micro decisions. So here's what I want you to take away. 1. The debt spiral is real, it's historical, and it's happening now. 2. This will affect you regardless of whether you pay attention, but understanding it gives you options. 3. The solutions that would actually work are politically impossible, which means we're going to experience consequences, not corrections. 4. Your response should be personal resilience, skills, assets, diversification, and community. 5. This isn't the end of the world, but it is the end of a certain kind of world, and what comes next will be different. Rome didn't end civilization. It ended a civilization. Life continued, but in transformed ways. The people who thrived in post-Roman Europe weren't the ones who clung to the old system. They were the ones who adapted to the new reality. They built new institutions, new communities, new ways of creating value. Some of the greatest achievements in human history, universities, common law, the Renaissance, emerged from Rome's ashes. America's story isn't over, but the chapter we're in is closing. The debt spiral that destroyed Rome is here. It's real, and it's accelerating. Ignoring it won't make it go away. Hoping politicians will fix it is naive. Waiting for someone else to solve it is dangerous. The only rational response is to understand what's happening, accept that major changes are coming, and prepare accordingly. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. The same realism that would have saved Roman families if they'd understood their predicament. The same realism that will distinguish between those who navigate the coming changes successfully and those who get swept away by them. Every empire in history believed it was different. Rome thought it was eternal. The British thought the sun would never set on their empire. The Soviets thought they'd bury capitalism. They were all wrong. Not because they were stupid, but because they couldn't imagine their world ending. The systems they lived in seemed permanent, natural, inevitable, until they weren't. America isn't different. We're subject to the same economic laws, the same historical patterns, the same human tendencies that brought down every previous superpower. The debt spiral that destroyed Rome is destroying us right now, and the only question is whether we'll learn from their mistakes or repeat them. Based on current trajectories, we're choosing repetition. But you, individually, can choose differently. You can choose awareness over ignorance, preparation over denial, resilience over hope. The storm is coming. Rome faced theirs without warning, without historical precedent, without the ability to look back and see the pattern. You have all three advantages. Use them. Study history not as trivia, but as prophecy. Not because the future will be identical to the past, but because human nature remains constant and systems built on unsustainable foundations always, eventually, fail. The debt spiral is the defining economic reality of our time. Everything else, the political theater, the cultural battles, the daily news cycle, is distraction. The foundation is crumbling, and we're arguing about the wallpaper. Rome did the same thing. While the currency was collapsing and the borders were dissolving, Romans were still going to chariot races and debating philosophy. Normalcy bias is powerful. It makes us believe that because today looks like yesterday, tomorrow will too. It won't. The math doesn't work. The spiral is accelerating. And the time to prepare isn't when everyone else realizes it. It's now, while most people still think this is someone else's problem. Do you dismiss this as doom and gloom and go back to business as usual? That's what most will do. Or do you take this seriously, do your own research, look at the numbers yourself, and make different choices? The wealthy are already doing the latter. They're buying assets, diversifying internationally, developing exit strategies. They read history and act on its lessons. That's not insider information. It's just pattern recognition. You don't need to be wealthy to think like this. You need to be honest about what's happening and realistic about what it means. Rome's collapse was a tragedy for millions, but some families not only survived, they thrived. They became the foundation of medieval aristocracy. They preserved knowledge through the Dark Ages. They positioned themselves for the world that came next instead of clinging to the world that was ending. That opportunity exists now. The systems are changing. The economic order is shifting. The debt spiral is doing its work. You can rage against it, you can deny it, or you can understand it and adapt. Only one of those options serves you. History isn't just the past. It's the future's blueprint. Rome's debt spiral destroyed them. It's happening to America right now. The question isn't whether you believe it. The question is what you're going to do about it. Because ready or not, willing or not, aware or not, the spiral is turning. And where it stops, nobody knows. But where you are when it does, that's entirely up to you. The warning has been issued. The patterns are clear. The choice is yours. Don't say nobody told you. Rome didn't have that luxury. You do. Use it wisely.